Hi, my name's Lily. Welcome back to Small Talk. So, a lot of things happened in the world of politics, European politics, over the weekend. We're going to have a look and break some of those down today. We're going to talk about the Euro election results, looking at the main takeaways there, and specifically the battleground of Brexit in the UK. We will also look quickly at Theresa May's resignation and what that means for Brexit as well. Over the weekend, tens of millions of EU citizens voted for their representatives in the European Parliament. There are three main takeaways from these European elections. First, the centrists did lose support, and they lost their majority in the European Parliament. You see, when parties are elected to the European Parliament, they then form blocs with other like-minded parties in that Parliament. Greens with Greens, Liberals with Liberals, far right with far right, vice versa. So, traditionally, there's been two main centrist blocs. Just like in many national parliaments, the same happens in the European Parliament. The centrist right EPP is traditionally the largest bloc, with the Socialist and Democratic bloc coming in second. Now, they are still the largest blocs, but they have lost significant numbers, which means that they cannot form a shared majority any longer, and they have a lot more smaller parties to contend with. The second main takeaway is that the Greens did very well across Europe. There seemed to be a wave and a surge in support. We've seen it with climate action, Greta's protests with the school children, and you can see that in the bloc, the Green bloc, like I spoke about before, where the parties join a new one, in the Green bloc, they're going to add half of their members again. So that is a fantastic result. It's their best result ever in the European Parliament. The third main takeaway is that the far right didn't quite meet the expectations. It had been expected that the far right would sweep across Europe, seize the agenda, turn it into anti-immigration, anti-European, etc. That didn't quite happen. The other main takeaway was the participation in these elections. Turnout was up across the bloc. It did fall in some countries, but in countries where things have been seen as contentious in recent years, think Spain, think France, think the UK, in all of these countries, turnout was up as voters went to the polls in a way that has not been seen in European elections in recent history. Okay, so now let's take a turn to the Brexit battleground in the UK, where the two main parties, Labour and Tories, were horribly punished in a massive Brexit backlash from both sides, Remain and Leave. First place goes to Nigel Farage's Brexit party. Does what it says on the tin, I would imagine, which is why they're so popular. They took 28 seats and 33% of the vote. That's a huge vote share. The Brexit party seems to have taken over UKIP, Tories, everybody, in being the only legitimate vehicle for people to express their wish to deal with Brexit and get it done now. The Brexit party is also positioning itself as unafraid and fully willing to embrace no deal, which means that this has suddenly become more likely in October. Now, this party is 6 weeks old. It doesn't have a manifesto. If you think that they won the greatest part of the vote in the UK with no policies outside of delivering, making sure Brexit is delivered satisfactorily, I would imagine, that's quite incredible. Now, it should scare the Tory party. If the Tory party is not able to reconcile this Brexit issue, it is facing an existential threat in the Brexit party. But Conservatives say that they're not worried. They say that this is a single issue party, and once they've done Brexit, what else do they have to offer? And it's true. We'll have to see if the Brexit party has even the resources to replicate this in a general election. So, with the Brexit party so far ahead, doing so well on 33%, does that mean that Leave won in the public opinion? That would be a little bit too easy to assume. The other big winners were the Liberal Democrats and the Greens, both ardent Remain parties. So, the Lib Dems came in second, which is fantastic for them since they had been a party in political decline ever since Nick Clegg's time as leader and the huge scandal around tuition fees. The Lib Dems had sort of been kicked into the political wilderness. But no, these local elections just gone, and these European elections have been fantastic for them. And since they are brand Remain, they are hoovering up all of the Remain votes. So what can we take away from the British side? Brexit still dominates the national politics. So if you don't take a strong position on Brexit, you're going to be harmed. I think that Labour especially had thought that they could play the middle ground. They had been desperately trying to change the agenda to be talking about austerity, inequality, other things, but they miscalculated. The country is still very much split along these lines, leave or remain, and it looks like they are not coming together anytime soon. If anything, the parties that chose extreme positions did better, and Labour and Conservatives who tried to occupy the middle ground were severely punished. This means that both of them may tack to a position now. It does seem like the Conservative Party's mandate to govern has all but vanished. They polled at 8% of the vote. That's how much of the vote they got, 8%. Now this is the party in government. And if you want to know how serious that is, if they were fighting a general election where the first past the post system is used, not this representative system of voting, if they had been fighting a general election, they would return no seats. So the party of government, if they had been fighting a general election, would return no seats. Now, this should set off alarm bells for Labour and Conservatives. I mean, Labour has been in opposition for 9 years and fell to 3rd place behind the Lib Dems. So it does look like possibly a second referendum, or at least a general election, is going to be needed to be fought out so that the public can shift onto the side and politicians can see more clearly what the national mood is. We can also see that the Lib Dems and the Greens are now the vehicles for Remain, and they have hoovered up that Remain vote that fell out of Labour and Conservatives and their sort of dithering on the issue. Okay, so with Theresa May's resignation, that becomes the second Prime Minister whose political career's death records Brexit as the cause, with David Cameron resigning after the referendum result. Now, Theresa May could not really continue. Her withdrawal agreement, which we do have a separate video on, she agreed this with the EU back in November and has been desperately trying to push it through Parliament to no positive effect. The only thing about this deal that everyone could agree on was that it was terrible. That was her enemies and allies alike. So she has had to go with it. Now we have an internal Tory leadership contest. There are dozens of names in the ring at the moment. We have some Remain Tories who could be going up for it. We have Leave Tories. The front runner is, of course, Boris Johnson, but that does mean that he will come under a lot of attack from the others since he is in the lead. I don't really see it being possible that it will be another Remain Prime Minister, since Theresa May was herself Remain. We probably now will see a Brexiter, and we will probably see them at least embrace no deal as an option, if not wholeheartedly. Now, this new leader should be in place around July, and this does muck up the Brexit timetable a little bit, because if you think about that, we're supposed to leave on the 31st of October. And in theory, this new leader is supposed to renegotiate with the EU. The EU has said, no way is that ever happening. They stand behind the deal that they have negotiated on in good faith, and they say that a better negotiator or a better negotiation doesn't exist, that we are continuing to perpetuate lies or falsehoods that harm our exit. And actually, May's resignation makes both no deal and no Brexit more likely. Whether we then get a general election or not, I'm not sure. Whether the new deadline is pushed back in order to allow for a general election, who knows? Whether we then see the Conservative Party work towards a no deal, again difficult, because they would not be able to get that passed through Parliament. Parliament would disrupt a government trying to put no deal in. And whether this actually comes about in producing a second referendum and possibly no Brexit, let's wait and see. Thanks very much, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Crikey!